What's happening, guys? This is Adi with Gate 7 International. I'm here. It's the last deep dive of the summer window. Well, we don't know what's going to happen after the UEFA registration deadline, which technically is right now at the time of recording. We could get another signing for the league, but as of right now, this is the last major signing of the transfer window, the last signing that will be included on our UEFA list, and that is Stevan Jovetic, the Montenegrin striker, 33 years old, and we're excited to chat about him. But before we do, guys, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you don't already. Help us continue to grow the red and white community. And if you want to support us, you can always support us on Patreon. Many of you give donations during our live shows. If you want to get something for that, check us out on Patreon. Enhanced analysis and interviews outside of Olympiacos are done. And you also get early access to these scouting reports. So check us out, support us if you'd like. Without further ado, let's talk about our new striker, Stevan Jovetic, the Montenegrin striker, as I mentioned before. Now, he is a right footed striker. He's played as a second striker as well in a 4-4-2 setup and also as left winger. Very interesting. He sits at about 6 foot tall, 183 centimeters, 79 kilograms or 174 pounds. If you listen to my co-host Costa's reaction video, then you know that he has played in each of the top 5 leagues in during his professional career, and he's also currently the captain of the national team. He is a pretty crafty ball carrier. He has an oddly heavy second touch, not first touch, because when he settles the ball, it's like right there, but that next touch, usually right after he's about, kicking the ball out to dribble, it's really heavy, and it always goes out. I don't want to say always. Most of the time tends to go out maybe a little bit further than he'd like. Really interesting. Not super quick, but can change direction pretty fast. Adept at getting past defenders with the outside of his right foot, kind of these quick changes of direction. He also, I've seen him flick the ball over a couple of defenders, which was quite nice. He's very accustomed to dropping back to receive the ball and link up with the midfield. And he's another player that can take set pieces. So now most of these new guys we brought in have some set piece ability. He does have capacity to be a hold up striker, but the value seems to be in his ability to play as a false nine. I know a lot of you guys are disappointed with this transfer. Our social media was filled up with it when they announced it. And trust me, I was less than thrilled initially as well. But there is context to the player, some points of intrigue that may have you reconsidering an ultra negative viewpoint. We'll see. So let's get started with goal creation and the player profile. So his goals have come almost entirely off of his right foot and usually from the top of the 18-yard line, or I should say the top of the penalty box. That's his sweet spot. Doesn't matter if it's a rebound, him driving in after carrying the ball, or having the ball played to him there. Literally almost every goal came in that context. And sure, he had a handful of headers and some tap ins that left foot, but the majority of his goals came from that spot. Carrying the ball, getting the ball played in, didn't matter. Rebound, that's what he got. 90% of the goals were like that. Um, Off of set pieces in the opponent's penalty area, he's not usually positioning himself in the fray, but at the top of the box to receive the rebound for those shots. And this was the same scenario that we talked about just now with the goals. Just kind of sitting there waiting for his chance, not getting in there, getting in kind of some of those scrums that you see a lot of players involved trying to get the ball off of a free kick. You didn't usually see that. He also has a pretty nice curling shot when he's coming down his left side of the field, and takes the ball in and takes a quick shot with his right foot. Very nice curling shot. It was really surprising to me that it really never worked out that often because it looks pretty good when he takes the shots. So something to pay attention to when he's playing for us and whipping some of those shots in. His shot volume overall, you can look at the bottom goal quadrant there or bottom third of the chart there with goal creation. He's sitting above the 70th percentile when it comes to shot or overall shot volume. And he gets plenty of looks, and part of that is because he's a pretty selfish striker. I don't necessarily mean that as a bad thing. Sometimes you need a selfish player that's going to take those opportunities. And it also doesn't surprise me that he's outperformed his XG. It seems to be a constant in his career as far back as the data goes that he's outperformed his XG. And as long as he's in that sweet spot at the top of the penalty area, he's going to convert more of those chances more often than not. But if he's going to be continually limited to either one of the sides, especially the right side, but if he's limited to that left or right side, he's not going to put a lot of goals away. As far as his assist volume goes, again, very low in comparison to other forwards and wingers in the Bundesliga. You can see that in the chart. The ones he did have were pretty impressive. I brought up this false nine aspect when I discussed the basic profile of the player. And I bring that up in no small part to some of the assists I saw. He is so dangerous when he gets a little bit deeper, lets his wingers or his forward partner get ahead of him and make those runs while he draws a midfielder or a defender. He can pick some of these passes through the defenders pretty routinely. And it's really lovely to watch. Some of these absolute needles that he threads, it's something else. So the fact that he can be a selfish player is frustrating in a way because you see this vision and ability, and I'm sure we're going to see it at Olympiacos. But then the very next couple of plays, you'll see him on a counter where he's got two players open in stride, and all he has to do is play one of them through, but he's going to choose to run at two defenders and try to take a shot, all while being not the fastest guy in the world either. So just some quick context for you with regards to his goal creation. Up next, we've got the build up and the possession part of his game. And while the goal creation part didn't exactly surprise me, and what I mean surprise me was the low volumes in terms of his end product outside of overall shots and outside of his goals, which of course we already talked about him outperforming his XG. The part that surprises me in all this is the build-up part, and the reason that is, early in his career, I know a lot of people described him as a false nine, good in build-up in that respect, but I didn't expect that to still be the case now, and you can see in the data here, his progressive passes, volume of balls into the final third that caught me by surprise, how high that was in the Bundesliga compared to other forwards and wingers. I alluded to this part also in the goal creation segment. His smart passes, ability to cut the lines of the defense, oddly consistent as well. Adequately involved in build up, repeatedly returns to link up with the midfield as well. And the way he draws defenders in and releases his wingers into the final third just like screams false nine. And not a typical hold up forward. While he doesn't have a lot of pace on him, his involvement in that buildup makes him just a completely different value proposition to a striker like El Kabi, for example. He has the capacity for one touch and some nice combination play with his teammates, but more often than not, I did see him hold the ball probably for an extra step or two in most cases. Pass accuracy, as you can see, it's exceptionally poor. A lot of that does have to do with a lot of these long balls that he likes to play through the defense. Um, these are kind of more risky balls, harder to complete, which is why they look so nice when they're actually done. But it still doesn't account for all of these giveaways. Hertha Berlin was pressed quite intensely and quite often. We can say that at least based on the data. Jovetic did not seem to adjust too well to this. Maybe, you know, because of the nature of how Hertha Berlin was getting pressed, maybe didn't have a lot of help. But I do know that at Olympiacos, he's going to be required to release the ball sooner than at Hertha Berlin. He's not going to be afforded the same amount of time to dribble. Diego Martinez's system, we've seen it just in the 7 games that we've been able to see so far. It's everyone has to pass and move. You're not afforded a lot of time to dribble and hold onto the ball too much. So, moving on to the defensive traits, I didn't see a player that really tracked back much unless he was already dropped deep. And if he was dropping deep to receive the ball, his team lost the ball, then he was there and he would try to do something about it. Wasn't really also impressed on the press, when he actually did it. He was pretty poor closing players down. This is a stark contrast from El Kabi in this respect. Maybe this is another red flag. I brought up the fact that he kind of holds the ball maybe a step or two, maybe a little bit selfish, which can work for and against him. But another red flag that could see his transition into the team affected is this really poor, not being able to track back, the poor defensive side of things. So that could be something. At the same time, we are desperate for a day in, day out goal scorer. So maybe it doesn't matter. Who knows? But it's just something I saw on the tape. Really, the only positive part of the defensive aspect of his game was his aerial ability. You know, defensively in that respect, he can be quite helpful. He gets some good air, and he's a pretty physical body. But other than that, aside from the fact that he's not really a foul risk, his defensive attributes are poor, especially compared to other forwards and wingers in the Bundesliga. So now we're going to bring up, the comparisons. You guys love this. You guys ask me for it all the time. So the comparison we're doing this time is to Youssef El Arabi. And since we're looking at somebody that is supposed to replace the goals that El Arabi used to give us when he was more in his prime, it's only appropriate we make this comparison to Jovetic, I should say. Now, from the outset, we see some similarities. Currently, both Jovetic and El Arabi are not fast enough to be progressing the ball forward themselves. Not going to surprise any of you. They're not carrying the ball much. They're not taking defenders on. El Arabi isn't beating guys one on one. He's just getting around them or giving himself space to take a shot. Jovetic does something similar to that. They do also have some similarities in how they link up with their midfielders. Prime El Arabi was capable of these link ups. But as you can see last year, El Arabi's build up capabilities were drastically diminished. You could see that in the radar plot. Jovetic still can engage here and at a top level. He did it at the Bundesliga. El Arabi's end product, though, even in a down year, outshines Jovetic. But bear in mind, guys, El Arabi's playing in Greece, Jovetic is playing in the Bundesliga. So it goes without saying that we would expect that some of the numbers for Jovicic's end product would increase, hopefully drastically, when he's playing in Greece. But for argument's sake here, El Arabi, the end product is better. Jovetic, the build-up portion of his game is better. Now, if somebody told Greek media that we were going to sign this guy, maybe it would have prevented them from making the El Arabi 2.0 comparison with El Kabi, because Jovetic has a lot more in common with Youssef El Arabi than El Kabi does. Not that this all of a sudden makes me any happier about the transfer, but just to be very clear on that comparison, El Kabi was nowhere near a Youssef El Arabi 2.0. But if we had to pick between Jovetic and El Kabi, who was similar to El Arabi and who's going to be more likely to fill that role, it's Jovetic. Jovetic has those characteristics that El Arabi had that we would loved in his first 2 seasons when he was here. Jovetic is 33. He's only a couple years younger than El Arabi. Maybe we can get him to bring that to us in that respect. But again, just to be clear on the comparison, Jovetic has more in common with Youssef El Arabi than El Kabi ever will. So all that into consideration, the comparison, the discussion about the player profile, what is my verdict? And there's a lot of context with what the verdict is. This signing, another center forward, it was the last thing we needed to bring the puzzle together. Earlier today, at the time of recording, the club announced that the return of Daniel Podense, who is our third signing at the winger position after Brinic and Solbakken. The club announced Podense today, and from what we have seen so far, without even getting a look at Podense or Solbakken, we have quality in so many places on the pitch now. Stark contrast to last year. And this signing has to be the cherry on the top of the cake. That is the team that's being cooked by Cordon. So the importance of making this final signing the thing that brings all the pieces together. It annoyed me that we signed Jovetic, I'm going to be honest. And I said that earlier on. You have a 33-year-old journeyman whose career's on the downturn, joining another 36-year-old, Youssef El Arabi, and a 30-year-old who hasn't played in a league beyond the Turkish league. So I was totally underwhelmed, even given the understanding that our budget was very thin and the Inbom Huang sale where we're getting 5.5 million from Red Star. It happened too late. We didn't have time to make that money useful for us. But going through the data and seeing the value proposition of Jovetic, it gives me a little glimmer of hope, maybe more glass half full mentality. Before I saw the data, if I had just given you the review without seeing everything and getting a nice look at the tape with some context, I wouldn't have given this a thumbs up. I would have just said, "No, I don't like the signing." But all that into consideration, we're at about a half thumbs up. It's a free signing, so there's very little financial risk. We didn't have budget or enough time to really do anything about this position. We prioritized other things first, which in my opinion were more important in some respects, especially like the winger position. We got a body in El Kabi, and that was good enough to get us where we needed to go. But if this player can stay healthy, and if he can find some form under Diego Martinez, this is a player that could be a 20 goal per season striker for us. Now, it's not lost on me. These are really big ifs. And I have to say, I'm not totally convinced, especially given that the value I saw in him was as a false nine. And that's a system that Diego Martinez almost never runs. It doesn't really make you feel like we're getting the right piece here to complement us. But we're going to support the player. No matter who puts on that red and white shirt, we will support him. And if anyone can get the best out of Jovetic, it's Diego Martinez. I mean, look what he was doing, how we were playing in preseason with most of the same guys we had from last season. He's already worked a miracle to get us playing this way, to get us the group stage, and to go into this first international break undefeated, 10 goals, 4-0 against in the league. I mean, it's a miracle. So if he can do that, he can figure out how to get something out of Jovetic. We'll see what happens. We're going to hope for the best in that regard. But my hope is that his capabilities in possession are going to shine since we are a team right now that is very dominant, very aggressive in possession. And we need this, and it's going to complement the pass and move. That is my hope, is that that's what is going to happen. That is my hope. The pragmatist in me thinks we're going to see another dud, perhaps like another Franco Hara, Menike, who knows? But the pitch will tell us everything, and we'll really see. I hope I'm wrong. I'm hoping being maybe a little bit more negative on the transfer than it turns out to be. We'll see. But thank you guys for tuning into yet another scouting report. The season's pretty much done. There's not going to be much after this. The Greek deadline for transfers is September 11th, which is next week. But I really doubt we're going to be bringing anybody in now that the UEFA deadline is closed. I don't see us bringing anyone in specifically just for Greece. You never know; could be wrong, but if this is the case, this will be the last scouting report, at least until the winter. So I hope you guys found this information valuable, and I hope I was able to give you some insight into Jovic. Maybe you're still negative on the transfer, but maybe I gave you some ideas on what the context for success would be with this player. So if you have any questions, as always, don't forget to reach out. Don't hesitate to reach out to me on socials. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. We are Gate 7 International, by the fans for the fans, and we will see you next time.